Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ignorant Intellectual on Media. Today, I thought we'd start a new series of episodes that I've hinted at through some of the previous videos, if you've watched them, about, well, two of my favorite media or mediums are films, obviously, because of all the videos I've made on them, and books. You've seen in a lot of the hauls I've collected books, and I have a book collection as well as a film collection, as well as a CD collection. So I like media in general. So I had mentioned before that maybe I'd do a series of videos comparing one medium, which is film, to another medium, which is, literature or books, right? So, um, because don't quote me on the percentage, but if I was to guess, I would say at least 75 to 80% of all movies that have come out um, are taken from some sort of literature, either books, plays, short stories. So, for example, let's say The Running Man. Remember that Schwarzenegger film that was taken from a short story by Stephen King when he wrote as Richard Bachman in a, I can't remember the name of the book though. I'll show it here. I'll show the book here. I think it's I can't remember anyways. It was called The Running Man. Um, and the book and the movie, I may do those two because those two are quite different, and that would be a good comparison. Maybe I'll add that to the list. Running Man, the short story that Stephen King wrote, and the film with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. Anyway, um, so many. You'll watch a film and most of the time you'll see, say starring this actor, based on the play or based on the novel or based on the book or based on the short story of this author, right? So many of them are that way. So I thought this would be a cool um, series where we compare the book to the film and see which one is better. Now, if you like reading and you like watching film, this would probably highly interest you. Um, Maybe it'll also spark your interest in picking up a book that's that the film that you actually watched came from, or go watch the movie that a book that you've read has come from, right? So anyways, I thought I would do an easy one since this is the first one we're doing. Thought I'd do an easy one, and I'll explain why it's easy. But this is the one that I decided to do to open this, to be the inaugural episode of movie and book comparisons, and it's Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, the book by Edward Albee. It's actually a play, not a book. All right, and then the film by Mike Nichols. Okay, starring Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. All right, so these are what I'm going to compare. All right, so a lot of films, when comparing to the book, are adamantly different. Some follow the book very well. Others, break off from it because maybe the book doesn't translate well into a visual medium, so they got to change it up and maybe rewrite the book into a different type of script. But the idea, the kernel of the idea is similar, right? So um, this one basically, the two, the book and the movie are basically almost exact. All right. The only difference is that the play in the book takes place in the living room of Richard Burton, or George and Martha, as they were called, one of the famous couples of all time, George and Martha. It all took place in the living room of George and Martha's home. And in the film, what you'll see is them leave the living room and move to different areas of the house, and they ended up going outside. I think the final scene was on a gazebo. I haven't seen the film for a while, but I think it was outside on the lawn anyway. So, but basically, let's explain what this film is about first, and then we'll go into it more, right? So basically, this film stars Elizabeth Taylor as Martha and Richard Burton as George, and Richard Burton plays a college professor, and Martha, or Elizabeth Taylor, plays his wife, and they invite a young couple that are new to the university campus or college campus over for drinks after they were out at a party, like a like an alumni party or a college party of some sort. Um, so they come back, and then basically the next 2 hours or 90 minutes or however long the film lasts, basically Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton rip each other to shreds. All right. Basically, they have an unhappy marriage. They have um, a antagonistic marriage. They have a toxic marriage, and they just go at each other. And I would um, the language and the just getting underneath each other's skin type of thing. Um, Albie in his play just just goes right to the throat. I mean, he is an extremely good playwright, and this is one of the greatest plays of all time, and it translates extremely well into a film. Now, Mike Nichols um, filmed it in black and white just to even make it more bitter, because a black and white film seems more stark and more depressing than a color film, right? And now Elizabeth Taylor was only like 30 years old when she did this film, so she was a young star at the time, right? And Martha in Albie's book or play or whatever is an older person. They're middle aged. They're in their 40s, right? So Richard Burton was he 40? He may have been in his late 30s, but Elizabeth Taylor was only 30 when she did this. So they did a makeup and everything on her to make her look older, and it worked. And man, them two go at it, and they're married in real life, right? So at that time they were married, all right, um, and they just go at each other. It's just ridiculous how well they just dig into each other, and it's like the worst. I would not be want to be on the receiving end of Elizabeth Taylor in that film. In fact, I would not want to get into any type of argument with Edward Albee, all right, because he knows the human condition like the back of his hand or at least in marriage he does. And I would not want to trade insults with that guy because he'd probably tear me a new one. That's how good he is at it, right? So, and you just see it in the film as well as when you read the book. When you read the book, you're just, my goodness, it's like, do not, I mean, if you're a parent, okay, let's say you have a daughter that wants to get married and she's like 18, all right, and she's fallen in love for the first time and she really thinks the guy that she's dating is great, and maybe you as a parent think he's okay, but he's like aimless or whatever. He's not, he's young, right? He spends most of his time in front of a TV playing video games and shit like that, right? So you're going, what? You're in love with this guy, da, 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 and then they decide that they're going to get married when they're 18 or whatever, and you're going, yeah, no, but if you know how teenagers are, they rebel against their parents, so the more you want to discourage them from doing it, the more they want to do it, right? So I would suggest that you sit them down and say, let's go to a movie, or let's watch a movie, all right? And you sit down with your daughter or your son, and you watch who's afraid of Virginia Woolf, and you say you say to them, okay, this is how marriage can be if you if you marry young, because these two people in this film have been married for like decades, and they married when they were young, right? And anyways, it might it might discourage them from actually getting married. You really, that's how married people act or could act? Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that would be quite quite brutal. I would not suggest, if you're you know, in pre-wedding bliss, to watch this film before you say I do to your future husband or wife, because it will scare you off from it. It's just ridiculously brutal. Anyway, so but which one is better? Okay, so basically, all right, when Albee wrote he wrote it, and when Albee wrote the play, he wrote it, and it was put on Broadway in 1962, and it got rave reviews. I mean, it was just extremely well received. It won a Tony Award for it, right? So it had all the accolades of a Broadway play, a great Broadway play. You know what they do with great speak, Scott, Broadway plays is they try to adapt them to film, right? And so they did that with this, and this film came out in 1966, and Mike Nichols decided to, color was popular at that time, right? So, but he decided to do this film in black and white, and it adds to the it's the feeling you get when spring, when all the flowers are budding and all the trees are blossoming and everything. You get that renewed feeling. And then when fall comes, and after all the trees lose their leaves, not during when they change color, but after that, and basically every tree looks naked, and then the snow comes. That feeling, well, that's what a black and white film can feel like, right? So that's why he did that, to make Elizabeth Taylor look older, all right, because she would look older in black and white than she would in color. Make Richard Burton look older, because they were kind of young to play these roles, right? So, and to make the film more stark and more depressing, right? So, um, and Elizabeth Taylor, I think this is so the play won a Tony, all right. And actually, Mike Nichols came from Broadway and directed this film. I don't know if he was the director of it when it was on Broadway. I don't think he was, but I would have to check that. Um, I'll leave it here whether he was or not. Anyway, so we filmed it in black and white, and Elizabeth Taylor is just a tour de force in this film. My God, she's such a great actress, right? And Richard Burton, um, very good as well. But Elizabeth Taylor just takes the show on this in this film. But which is better, the film or the book? I think this one's going to end up being a tie, because the film is basically the same as the book. I mean the language is the same. Um, the Everything is the same, except for, like I said earlier, the play is takes place in the living room of their house, but in the movie they kind of move from the living room and they end up going outside onto the lawn. I think there's a gazebo there, as well, but I remember gazebo, but I haven't seen this film in a few years. But anyway, so if you have not watched this film or read this book, I highly suggest you do, because it won a Tony when it came out in '62. So it's a great play. All right, and this is why I mentioned I was going to do an easy one as the first episode, because actually this really isn't a book. All right, it's basically a play that's meant to be shown in a theater, and then you go see it like you would a movie, right? So it's written like it's a play or a movie, right? So basically, it's easier to adapt a play than a novel is to a film. All right, it's easier to adapt a film from a play than it is from a novel or whatever, right? Because you can follow basically the play mostly when you're doing the film, whereas in a novel you usually have to rewrite it into a script. I mean, they did that with this film as well, but they pretty much stay point by point as the play itself, right? So it's easier to compare the two, because they're both actually, one would be live theater and the other one would be a film, right? So, but you're not going to. I mean, if you ever have the chance to actually go see the play, if it's playing anywhere, maybe you're in New York and it's playing on Broadway again, or off Broadway, they'll bring or wherever you are. If that, I would highly suggest to go watch that play. But I don't know if anybody could do as good as Elizabeth Taylor as Martha in that film. I don't know. I don't know. It may be the reason why you. I don't think there's ever been a remake of that film. It's just too perfect. It's the first film to be awarded or nominated, sorry, in every freaking category at the Oscars that it was ever eligible for. Now I don't know how many it won, or if it won or many or not, but Richard Burton was nominated, Elizabeth Taylor was nominated, Nichols was nominated, the screenwriter was nominated, the film was nominated. It was everybody was nominated from that film that year in 1966. That's how great this film is, and yeah, it's just it'll blow your mind how mean people can be to each other. I mean, like mean. It was like a boxing match, or a roast, like not a funny roast, but like a mean roast. Like how badly can you insult your husband or your wife to the point, I mean, that will rip their heart out of their chest, and you just go back for it more and more. It's just like, oh man, it's such a brutal. I can't describe how brutal that film is. And when you read the book, you get that same feeling. All right, so I would have to say it's an equal. Neither one is better than the other one. But if I was have to err on a percentage, like maybe 51 to 49, I would say since it's meant to be a visual medium, anyways, I would say the movie is just a touch better than reading the book. Um, but either one, and what you don't fall into with this, because it's a play and it's meant to be, seen. Um, you don't get into that situation where um, sometimes when you read a book before you watch the movie, you have your own imagination on what's happening. You know, like as you read the book, your imagination takes off, and then you start picturing what's going on in a picture while you're reading the words. And then when you see the film afterwards, it doesn't match the picture that was in your head, and it kind of turns you off on the film, and you think the book is better. But if you've seen the film first, then when you start reading the book, your imagination doesn't spark because what you're doing is relating the movie to the book, right? So there is in these episodes, you're going to see. I bet you're going to see a bias or an influence with my opinion on which is better, on whether I read the book first and then watched the movie, or I watched the movie first and then I read the book, right? So I think there's going to be an influence either way, where if I've seen the movie first, then I think the movie is better than the book, or if I've read the book first, then I think the book is better than the movie, right? But we'll see if that bias kind of actually manifests itself as I'm doing these reviews over time, right? So, but in this one, it's pretty much damn well equal. The only thing that maybe pushes the movie better than the book is the acting ability of Elizabeth Taylor in that film. My God, it's such an awesome film. All right, and just as an aside, the film, um, the biggest problem with the film, you would think, because if you went to see the play on Broadway, there's like swear words left and right. I mean, they're swearing at each other all the time, right? And during that time in the 60s, Hollywood was still back in the censorship era of the 1930s, right? So you weren't allowed to show husband and wife in bed together. They would have to be in separate beds. You weren't allowed to use profanity. I mean, if you were going to do a crime film, that crime film had to have a punishment at some point where the criminal gets punished at the end of the film. I mean, you couldn't have them get away with it scot free. You weren't allowed to do that on film. Anyway, so this film, Nichols and what was the head of the MPAA at the time? I wrote it down. What was his name? Visconti Valente. All right, his name was John Valente. Anyways, Valente. He was the president or the head of the most motion picture association of America at that time, and he allowed this film to be made with all the swearing intact. So when they swore in the book or in the play on Broadway, they kept it for the film, right? And basically, it challenged all the censorship in Hollywood, and that's what uh, Valente wanted to do, right? Was update, like bring Hollywood up to the mainstream, the time that it was at, not back in the 1930s, right? So it did that. And basically, the film rating system was invented, with the PG parental guidance, NC-17, restricted for people over the ages of 18, X-rated. That rating system came about because of this film. So because this is the first, so Jack Warner ended up buying the film rights to Albie's play for a whopping, my goodness, 500K, $500,000. He bought the rights to this film, right? And hell or high water, I think maybe everybody involved were saying we can't change take out all the swearing, because it basically takes out the brutality of them, and that's the whole point of the movie, right? The whole point of the book, the whole point of the play was the swearing is like an integral part of that interaction between George and Martha, right? And I mean, you can say you can go to heck, right? But if you say you go fuck yourself, right? The fuck yourself, it has more emphasis and it means more than you go to heck, right? So they just had to keep the swearing in, otherwise it just would have, it wouldn't have been the same play. It would have been stupid, right? So they did it and they bucked the trend, and basically the whole system changed because of that film. And then you saw artists doing more, having more freedom to film films like they wanted to film them, not with the restrictions that the censors expected of them, right? So anyway, so that's another issue that this movie came about. So you could have filmed it in color, but they filmed it in black and white to make it more stark and make Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton look older, and make it more bleak, um, because the whole film is bleak. You know what I mean? The whole play is bleak. Um, they kept all the swearing, despite what you know what the Motion Picture Association of America its outlines for film, right? So, and anyway, so it was a breakthrough film. It's basically a tie, basically between the book, all right, if you read it like a book in the play, and the film starring Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor. Um, a brutal film, a beautiful film, a great film, and Edward Albee, an extremely good playwright. All right. If you haven't seen this film, I highly suggest you see this film and read the book. Um, you can do it either way. You can read it first and then watch the film. This is the way that I did it. Um, or you can watch the film. But if you watch the film, it reading the play may be su- superfluous, superfluous, ignorant, intellectual. Um, Maybe kind of pointless, because you're just reading what Richard Burton and everybody in there acted, right? So anyway, so that's the first episode. What'd you think? Do you like this? Do you like this type of a video where we compare the book with the movie? And a lot of the times I bet, because even I'm surprised a lot of the times where I'll know a movie really well, or I'll know a book really well, and I didn't even realize they made a movie out of it. But mostly the opposite is, uh, they uh, they made a movie and I didn't even know that that book existed, right? So maybe you'll learn some new things about what books are out there as well, and maybe, oh, I really like that film, I want to read the book, and then you know that actually there's a book that exists that the film was based on, right? Anyways, we'll have more of these episodes in the future, and if you liked it, leave a thumbs up. Maybe think about subscribing to my channel if you like the content. I continue putting out content weekly, 2 or 3 times a week probably, um, on stuff. So any type of media, books, music, film, any type of thing that comes across, you know, has an interest. All right, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll talk to you in the next video. So you have a good rest of your day, and bye for now.